山での暮らしは別にどうということはない。毎日同じことを繰り返して毎日同じことを教えられた。そこでは明日はないんだ。始まりが朝で夜になれば終わる。一日は次の日にはつながらない。だから明日を夢見ることもない。次の日を楽しみにするなんて言葉はこっちに来てから知った感覚だったな。初めは馴染めなかったし馴染む気もなかった。けどみんながまた明日と満足そうに口にする。いつの間にかそういうものを夢見るようになっている自分がいた。
Soujuurou kept walking as he spoke. He stared straight ahead as if telling a story to the night itself, not once turning to face Aoko. For her part, Aoko was utterly silent. She knew it was pointless to so much as nod or ask a question.
目が覚めていつもの一日に戻ってふと気がつくと昨日までいた誰かがいない。訪ねてみると夜に体調を崩したらしい。たまにね、眠れなくなって家から出て行ってそれっきりな人もいたんだ。見なくなってしばらくした後、崖の下で見覚えのある遺体を見つけたこともあった。今にして思うとそれは異常なことだ。集まって暮らしていればそんなことにはならなかったのに、自分たちは関わらなかった。一日で完結する世界だったから他人は必要じゃなかったのかもしれない。山では食べるものも少なかった。飢えないためには他の人が寄りつけない場所に行くことが多くなる。その途中の道でいなくなってしまう人も多かった。山では誰も他人から奪うことを考えなかった。口にできるものを探すとき、気を配る相手は犬だの熊だのだけで人を気にすることはなかったんだよ。今はその逆になりつつあるけど、ともかく生活の半分はそれだけで済んでいた。
Soujuurou continued to stare straight ahead. He did not seem troubled by his memories. To Aoko's ears, it sounded like he was describing a place no one in their right mind would want to live, as if it were perfectly normal. Almost as if he missed it. But from that point onward, he slowly began to show more signs of distress as he spoke.
もう半分はまあ身を守る手段を教わっていた。学校の授業に比べたら些細なことだ。単に自分の体はどう動くものなのか、生き物はどう動くものなのかをよく見てよく考えろと言われた。単純な反復運動だ。小石を蹴ったり森の中にこもったり、まあそんな意味合いのことをやっていたんだ。あの決まり事が始まると朝も夜もなかった。外の変化に気持ちを向ける余裕はなくて、ふと気がつくと随分長く食事をしていないなんてのもザラだった。あ、ちゃんとご飯はもらえたよ。そういうのの後は。あれが何のためだったのかは今でもわからない。ただ山で暮らしていくには役に立ったし、そもそもあれだって生活の一部だった。生きるってことはそうすることだって思ってた。こうやって息をして歩くためにはあの繰り返しは当然のものだったんだ。
宗十郎、それは。
His tone was totally indifferent, but the strangeness of it all forced Aoko to interject. He glanced at Aoko and nodded as if to show he knew what she was thinking.
何かがおかしかったんだろう。あれは身を守る知恵じゃなくてもっと違う用途のものだった。たまにいなくなる知り合いは山の土になったんじゃなくて他の場所で他の理由で消えた場合もあったんだろう。でも考えることさえなかった。精神の隙間を知れだの 命の勝ち負けを知れだの意味を汲み取らないまま鵜呑みにして当然のように繰り返した。それがどう評価されるものなのか俺にはわからない。ただ知らなければ、外のことなんて知らなければ悩むことなく自分はそこに居続けられたと思う。
あなたの嫌いな生き死にの真似を続けて。
He did not respond to her question. From then on, they continued walking in silence. Aoko could not stop thinking about all the contradictions and absurdities in what he had said. The imbalance in his education, for one. His knowledge of the basics of human life was thorough, yet he knew next to nothing about modern technology. He always said he was not good at socializing, but he seemed accustomed to talking and discussion. His upbringing could not have happened that way by chance. It was most simply an environment purposely constructed according to a play by some third party. Aoko had no idea what that plan could be, or who the third party was, though. Why would anyone want to create someone with a background like Soujurou's? Was it all part of a grander plan? Or was there really a place deep in the mountains where it was normal to live like that? He had asked about this once in his home in the mountains, apparently. When he expressed his confusion, an elder had taken him aside, saying, "Jesus, that was creepy. This is just how things have always been around here, boy. There's no reason to keep doing it, but there's also no reason to stop." With a laugh, the elder chose a new identity and life outside the mountains for young Soujuurou and sent him off to live on his own. Aoko's home loomed at the end of their path. It was a generic home without any real distinguishing features. It seemed as if a house from town had been picked up and dropped here. One could imagine the residents were peaceful people who engaged in farming and raising animals in their spare time. Gazing at what lay before him, Soujuurou finally opened his mouth to answer Aoko's earlier question.
自分にはできなかった。知らなければよかったのに知ってしまったから。その後は簡単だ。泣けない鳥はいらないと言われた。今まで疑いもなくできたことを意味を知っただけでできなくなったものはいらないと。どんなに山にいたくてもできないのなら意味がない。俺は意味を知った瞬間に意味を信じることができなくなった。だから山を降りたんだ。けれど、どうなんだろう。そこではそうすることだけが全てだった。そうすることだけしか教えられなかった。だから。
There had been only one problem with his life in the mountains. Him, for having questioned it. It was all his mistake. He mattered as much to himself, his voice dripping with criticism. In Aoko's opinion, the world he described was, in a sense, perfect. The best situation to achieve a goal is one in which all elements extraneous to that goal have been removed. As long as the people involved have no concept of morality, they will consider the immoral to be completely correct. No, even such correctness would be foreign in concept. Only one thing was for sure. The world they had come from was frozen in time. That was what made Soujuurou's strategy possible. A world of wrongdoing and mistakes had created a human riddled with mistakes as well. Soujuurou understood that it was wrong, and yet he still thought it beautiful even now. Regardless of what the truth behind it might have been, he considered that world perfect. He only blamed himself for having learned what existed outside that world. He himself had said he could still be living there happily.
知らなければよかったのに。
He surely felt the weight of the sinful words he spoke more deeply than anyone else. That's why he still wondered what had gone
Awry.
Oh, away from the usual or expected course, mess, or out of the normal. Okay. Yeah, whose fault was it really? He did not want to answer these questions alone. He wanted her to state it clearly for him. There was a moment of silence that felt like an eternity before she spoke.
私には答えられないわ。
Her reply came quietly. It was not that she did not have an answer. It was that she could not tell him. It was a struggle for her to tell such a bold-faced lie. He reflected deeply on what she said. He knew right away that her words were coming from a place of kindness.
そうだな。君の最初の優しさが今でよかった。
A pleasant look floated across his face, but Aoko could only scowl.
何よそれ。まるで普段から優しくないみたいじゃない。
青崎は優しくないじゃないか。
She found herself unable to offer any protest against such a blunt statement. It was because she knew he was correct.
そうね。優しくなんかないわね、私。
Yeah, no. Soujuurou smiled in response to her vaguely sad consent as if to say, told you so. His indulgent smirk arose from his sense of a personal pride in the situation. It was both warm-hearted and uncomfortable, causing Aoko to instantly regret her question. If only she had asked about something else, something random that did not matter, then she never would have ended up in a mood like this. Only a few minutes remained until their path came to an end. Surrounded by a wooden fence, the house resembled an inn for passing travelers in winter. The light spilling out from the window brought to mind images of a lively dinner table, quite the opposite of the current mood between the two.
ごめん。悪いこと聞いちゃって。
Aoko stopped at the entrance to the yard. She had felt compelled to apologize even though it was the last time they would speak. Or perhaps it was because the last time. Soujuurou's only response was to shrug it off as if it were no problem.
話途中なのにね。
He looked up at the house he had hiked so far to reach, his breath hanging white in the air. All signs of gloom were gone from Soujuurou's face as he nodded.
自分も話してみてようやく振り向けたと思う。だから青崎には感謝してるよ。それにこれはもう終わったことだ。続きを話すのはまた機会があった時にしよう。
He turned his head to face Aoko with an ephemeral smile. It was his usual nonchalant self, the same as every other day. Aoko prayed that day would never come, for her own peace of mind, but also for the well-being of this very unique boy.
もっとも、そんな機会はもう来ないか。
Then she pointed in the direction of a cave hidden by a small forest on the other side of the house.
あそこ、ちょっとした洞穴があるの。そこに祖父がいるから、行って。 本当はもっと違った話が聞きたかったけど、仕方ないか。魔法は12時になると切れちゃうものだしね。
A sarcastic grin spread across her face as she spoke. And so Soujuurou walked off, totally clueless as to what fairy tale she was referencing. The forest felt so far from the house to Aoko that it was like a different place on Earth altogether. In reality, it wasn't far at all. Only 5 minutes away.
さよなら、しずきくん。
She said it to herself as she watched him simply walk away without turning back. Though he wasn't meant to hear her words of parting, they apparently reached his ears anyway.
ああ、じゃあまた明日、町のどこかで。
He raised his hand in farewell and then disappeared into the forest. Hey, what? As soon as she was sure he was gone, he turned her gaze to the sky. That night, the stars were even more beautiful than the moon. He had been looking at her fondly only moments before, and now he has gone into the forest with only a brief word of parting. It did not feel real. And with that, she finally understood, if a little too late to matter. She understood who had truly been the strange and unusual one. Anyone could have ended up behaving like Soujuurou, but not many could keep talking on and on the way he did. Everything he had done was now perfectly sensible in light of his former life in the mountains. As a magician, she was supposed to make miracles happen, but he had arrived at a miracle of his own through the trials and tribulations of following what he considered to be common sense.
素手で熊を倒すなんて、私にはどう転んでもできないし。
It was pretty impressive. Hell yeah. Soujuurou's own magic was so mundane to him that it made him depressed to talk about it. But even so, it was the kind of brilliance only possessed by humans. She pulled her eyes back down from the starry sky and began to walk. The lights were on inside the entrance and the door was unlocked. Aoko rolled up her sleeves and checked the time. 1 hour left till midnight. She had just barely managed to satisfy her parents' request to visit before the end of the year. Placing her hand on the door, she took a deep breath. She promptly stifled the faint affliction and sadness she had been feeling. It was her first time back in 2 years. Upon entering high school, she had begun living on her own, hence the past 2 years away from home. And how they flew by. For some reason, the memories began to race through her mind. There she stood, one hand on the door, reflecting on the past. Once the door was open, she would be staring at her future instead. Her hand holding the doorknob began to move. She was met with the warm scene she expected, though strangely different than that of her memories. It was comforting to encounter something familiar after being away for so long. And so it was with small, unspoken gratitude that Aoko returned to her home. Without stopping to ring the doorbell, she called out with a smile, "I'm home." Meanwhile, when Soujuurou stepped inside, they were struck with a strange feeling of familiarity. It was not mere nostalgia either. No, it reached further back into the past. It was a feeling from far beyond what he could even imagine. He was reminded of someone, but he could not remember whom. Perhaps he was only reminded of himself, or perhaps of the old man before him now in the cavern. It appeared to be an old man anyway. Soujuurou could not make out any details beyond a vague outline. As far as he could tell, the figure did not seem to have anything in the way of a face capable of making expressions. All he knew was that the smoke-like figure before him was the one Aoko called grandfather.
娘たちが世話になった。
Though hoarse, the old man's voice was powerful and it rang throughout the cavern.
これも縁だ。望みがあるのなら聞こう。
望みはないです。でも聞きたいことは一つあります。どうして二人を争わせたんですか？
それは私の外で起きた物語だ。答えることはできない。
そう仕向けたのはあなただと聞きました。
星の巡りだ。あれらは相入れない才能を与えられ、あのような形でしか噛み合えない人間だ。私の意図に関係なく、共にいればどちらかがきしみを上げた。だが、確かに衝突を避ける余地はあった。あれらの意志が凡庸であったか、あるいは破格のものであったのなら、多くの不順に耐えただろう。君のように自己の崩壊が見えていても共存を尊ぶように。しかし娘たちはそれを選ばなかった。
彼女たちが争うのは彼女たちのせいだって言うんですね。その原因はあなたにあるのに。
そうだ。あれらの争いはあれらの性を表すもの。原因というのなら私などゼロに等しい。
ゼロ？形がないということですか？
形ではなく意味がない。私という起因から起こり、娘たちが一つの命を得た時点で私は舞台から消え失せた。その後の因は常に娘たちから生じたものだ。私の介入はない。今回どちらが時間を終わらせても、あるいは両者が終わらせても、私には無価値だった。いや、元より無価値だ。私に価値を与える命はまだ生まれていない。あれらがどうなろうとやるべきことは変わらない。
青子が生きていても死んでいても跡継ぎを作るということですか？
おそらくこの体が消えないのはそういうことだ。
The steamy energy that filled the cavern made Soujuurou's head reel. The moment Aoko and Toka were born, their grandfathers seemed to have completely forgotten that they were his granddaughters. It was hard to imagine a satisfactory Aozaki heir ever being born. No amount of power would satisfy the old man. He showed no signs of compromise or restraint.
青子はそのために過去を捨てたのに。
There was nothing but silence. However, this short moment of quiet would occur only once. The unreadable outline of the old man grew blurrier still. Long ago, an unfortunate child once wandered into the cave. The old man automatically granted its request born from purity and ignorance. Oh yeah, the cat thing, right? He was a magician who had given up his ego in order to extend his own lifespan. And he did whatever he could to help the child. It had been an incredible coincidence to happen that day. That child glared at the old man with tear-filled eyes at the sight of all the horrible things that had been brought about. Everything will be lost, completely and without any warning, all because of the failure of a nobody like you. The child threw a tantrum at how unfair it was all. Unfair it all was. The magician claimed that it was merely the way of the world. The child stood up to him. Shut up, old man! And then... yes, just at that moment, that child ran around in tears trying to make the old man pay for the cost of our life. The cost of all the lives.
それは間違いだ、少年。
Perhaps that's how it happened.
捨てたのではない。それを美しくするために、あれは生きているのだ。
That role had likely come to an end long ago, however. The old man's appearance seemed to change before Soujurou's eyes. For just a brief moment, he wavered in the air as if in a haze.
君の過ちを正そう。娘たちは私というものをよく分かっている。ともすれば、私本人より理解しているとも言える。私が娘たちの人格を考慮せぬように、娘たちもまた私というものの人格を認めていない。祖父さえいなかったのならという考えさえないだろう。あれらはそもそも争い合う自分たちを一度も卑下はしないはずだ。君にその関係を分かれというのは酷だろうが。尋ね事は終わったようだ。次は私の番だ。君の名前を知りたい。
Soujuurou answered the old man's question. The smoky face seemed to frown, quivering ever so slightly.
意外だ。君は孤立しているというのに、複数を示す名がついているとは思わなかった。似合わん。まったく似合わん。だがそちらでは正しいことだ。不釣り合いな場所にいるのなら、不釣り合いな名が必要だろう。希少ではあるが、やはり無価値だ。すべてを肯定する諦めは死に由来するものだろう。続くものがない以上、一代限りの才能は無価値だ。我の行く末に影響を与えた君に興味を持ったが、失望した。無駄な時間を過ごしたようだ。今は結ばれているが、いずれ離れていくのは変えようのない結末だ。では立ち去りたまえ。私は死者に用はない。二度と会うことはないだろう。
Everything grew blurry. Soujurou's memories began to fade. It had been a conversation without any answers. An encounter without any significance, now vanished completely like a dream.